this is the Retail Pro version 8 physical inventory webinar. We try to do one of these right before the end of the year. We do another one in January, and they're all recorded. So if you're familiar with our website, there's a video library tab on that, and all of these webinars that we do, no matter what the subject, we do record them and post them. So if you want to review it at your leisure, instead of trying to take notes, that is available for you. And I do believe that everybody who signs up for the webinar does get an email back to the link for this one, so you don't have to go hunt for it in case you want it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started, right? And so as you can tell by my agenda here, preparation is the most important aspect of doing your PI. Preparation includes making sure that if you're multi-store, that you have given enough time so that it transfers from store to store. I'm gonna bring my Retail Pro up here. Transfers from store to store, or where'd it go? There we go. Transfers from store to store. I've had time to get where they belong. That's called a cutoff, right? If you're receiving merchandise, you want to make sure that anything you received is available to count. That usually means that you've got to ticket it. So allow yourself enough time to prepare adequately by the time the physical inventory comes. Okay, and that includes observing some cutoffs. I'm muted, really? Hang on a second. Brent says I'm muted. Hang on a second here. Stop.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thanks, Brett. So I had myself muted, so I was talking madly, and nobody was hearing me. All right, so welcome to the version 8 webinar. I will start over with that part of it. What we're going to go through today is from the beginning, how you take an inventory in version 8. I'm on a webinar. And so we plan, first of all, right? And so one of the things that I also need to show you is when you look at, we have these cookbooks or outlines of physical inventory. This happens to be the one that we use for the PT scanner, which is one of the types of scanners that we use. Okay, and down here, the first thing that it talks about is preparation, right? So going through, organizing your stock, making sure everything has a tag on it, making sure that you've cleaned out all the backroom areas and organized all that stuff. Make sure you're observing cutoffs, i.e., if you're multi-store and you transfer from store to store, okay, that all of those transactions that you've told Retail Pro have taken place, have had a chance to get to their actual location, so that when you count them, it matches as closely as possible with what Retail Pro's inventory is. In version 8, we also usually recommend that you do that you initialize inventory if you're a multi-store customer. So this little note right here, initialize inventory to remote locations 2 to 3 days prior to the physical. So this takes place in polling. Okay, if you are not familiar with where that is, okay, I'm going to drop into the polling icon right here. Okay, and you can do this. You know, we say 2 to 3 days ahead of time, just at some point, so it has enough time to get pulled out. And what you're doing here is making the on hand from the main for the store match what's actually going on out in the store. Okay, so I'm just going to click on my stations here. Okay, and if I go into initialize, okay, pick whatever store we're doing. All I need to initialize is the inventory right here, right? So that's got your on hand in it, and that's what you're concerned about, right? So you go into polling, if you're counting on a Saturday night, go into polling like Thursday or Friday, initialize the inventory, make sure that your polling has time to take place. with version 8, you of course need, that only happens at night when we're not using Retail Pro. So make sure that has time to complete in the couple of days before it's time to take the inventory. Okay, so organizing your floor into zones, right, so that it's easy to go through and count your merchandise and count it only once, instead of having some confusion about what you've counted and what you haven't. Setting up a zone is a good way to start. Doesn't have to be this fancy, doesn't have to be color keyed, just a rough outline map of the back wall, right? That's zone 1. If you have to split it into 2 zones, put a piece of tape down the middle or a ribbon or whatever, so everybody's clear which belongs in what section, right? So when you can send somebody out to count it, they count their section, and then depending on what scanners you're using or how you're actually doing the count, it's easy to say, okay, we've counted that section, we've counted that section, we've counted that section. Okay, so preparation is the most important thing you can do for a physical. If you've prepared properly, then usually the actual count goes a lot smoother. You make sure that you've counted everything, that you count everything only once, instead of being confused. If you have backstock areas that you can get away with roping off, okay, then you can, there's ways that you can pre-count that stuff and get it out of the way in the day before, okay, the inventory, and we can talk a little bit about that. All right, so when we get to the actual day of the inventory, and in this webinar, we cover a complete inventory of everything in the store, which is what most people are doing this time of year. And so what it depends on is that we're taking a snapshot of the on-hand in Retail Pro and comparing the counts to that snapshot. All right, so before we actually do that process, there are a couple of things that I always show people to check before they get ready to do a physical, so that they know those things are out of the way. A couple of things have to do with how you're actually taking the count. There's several types of scanners, okay, that people use. I showed you this one page here. This is what we call a PT scanner. Some of you who are on version 8 may be familiar with this. It's got a scanner attached to the top or the side with a curly cord usually, and then there's an interface cable that attaches to the bottom where you connect it to the printer, or computer. The other type of scanner, okay, is this type, right? So if you've been around for a while, you may have seen this symbol scanner here on the left, okay, or this Janum scanner here on the right. These things, both of these types of scanners have a cradle that you plug them into that serves as the charging base, and it also serves as the way to interface. Both of these two things run the same kind of software. It's called Smart Scan. Okay, so if you have these older scanners, we'll just kind of talk in general about how to download those scanners. But if you have used them or you rent them, because all 3 of those types we rent out to people who are doing physical inventory. And so usually with the rentals, we send them out, a day or 2 in advance and set you up with a tech appointment to make sure that that you know that we can connect the scanner and you know how to use it. Okay, and these are the 3 types that we actually rent, okay, and use. There is another scanner that some of you might have. These we do not rent, and looks like I lost my PDF of that one. Let's see if I can find that really quick. Sorry about that. No, we want this. That is this one right here. All right, so some of you might have this type of scanner. As soon as my PDF loads it up. Okay, and this is a scanner that has a little utility on it. It comes from Foundry Logic. We do not rent these kind, but if you have these scanners, these are also a cradle type scanner. You can go around the store. The difference with this scanner is you can put multiple zones in this scanner and it will keep them separate before you dump it. Okay, so We're going to focus on the other type of scanner. It's simpler to explain, especially when I don't have a scanner to actually show you. Okay, but what we're doing here also, so this scanner is also supported. Okay, and down. All right, so you have prepped your store. You've made sure everything is entered into Retail Pro that you're going to count, made sure you got tags on everything, got everything all organized. If you have never taken a physical in inventory or in Retail Pro 8 before, or even if you have, it would be wise to check the following settings. All right, so in Options and Workstation Preferences, over here on the side, okay, there is a spot that tells the system what kind of scanner you're using, if you're using a scanner. All right, so here under the Peripherals tab, okay, under Portable Barcode, okay, here's the barcode reader types. Right, so I have this one set to PT. The other two, the Palm and the Janum, both operate with this Palm, okay, as well as the Foundry Logic, the last one I showed you. So all the scanners I showed you, except for the PT, operate under the Palm. Okay, this one is the PT with the curly cord, the older type. Okay, you tell it what port it's attached to, and that's all there is to setting up this one. The other two have a little driver utility that needs to be installed, which if you're going to use any of the scanners, we want to make sure that you test them within or at least a couple of days ahead. So if there's any problem with it, you can take steps to get those problems corrected. All right, so check your workstation preferences, make sure it's pointed at the right kind of scanner if you're using a scanner. Okay, and then the other thing that's wise to check before you actually get started is actually in the physical inventory tool. Okay, so we're going to go to the physical inventory tool, which is on the day of inventory where all the action is. Okay, this is where you're going to start the physical. This is where you're going to download your scanners or enter your manual counts. This is where you're going to do your discrepancy reports, your updates, what have you. Okay, so you get into that spot here with the tools right here. Okay, and more. Okay, and RPro PI. Now, some people do have this RPro PI on their side menu. Most people don't. So we bury it a little bit. So tools, more, RPro PI. Okay, and that opens a separate little executable. Okay, that you do all your physical inventory work in. All right, so we're waiting for that to launch. Now it's launched. So the other thing on our list of things to check to make sure it's set up before you actually start the physical are in the Options tab up here at the top. Okay, System Preferences, and then most of you should be using zones. There are some who use Simple Physical, which means that they just count everything in the store and dump it into Retail Pro. And some people do that. Some people do that if they're using manual counts. Some people do that if they're putting their counts into Excel and then importing them, or if they're having one of these services, Regis or Washington, do their counts. Okay, while we're in this section here, what you're seeing here down here under Import File Maps. So this info here on the Regis line. Regis is an inventory service that you can pay to come in and count everything, and then they come in and count everything and then give you a file that we can help you upload. Okay, Washington Inventory Services, same type of deal. Okay, so those are services that are available and you can explore, get quotes. Both of these services do generally want what they call a validation file, which means a few days ahead of the inventory, we get on your system with you and create a file of all your valid item numbers, so or UPCs, depending on how you're doing it, so that they know when they scan an item that it's a valid UPC and not a random barcode that they scanned accidentally. All right, so in here, right, we would recommend that you would use zones. That's the way we're going to show you in the training. Okay, the rest of this, not really a settings that you would use, except in some individual, yeah, there's nothing in here that you would use unless you are in a hybrid situation where you have a version 9 main, right, and version 8 stores, which is kind of an outlier. So we'll not get too deep into that. All right, so check. Make sure you're using zones, okay, unless you do simple physical. Right, so the day of the inventory arrives, right? You've gotten all your prep work done, everything's organized, you're ready to do what we call the snapshot or the freeze or the start inventory, okay? And so to do that, you start the PI tool. I'm already in it, so I'm not gonna restart it, okay? You click on physical, all right, and then stores. All right, and this is what your screen should look like. Okay, so most of you do your counts at the remotes, at the actual stores, okay, unless your store is a main or your single one. So you would do this at the store after, okay, all the inventory or after all the sales are done, okay, and then before you actually do the start physical, it is a good idea to do a quick pull with the main so that your the main has exactly the same on hand as the store. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take a snapshot of the on hand that the store thinks it has. You're going to compare that to the counts. Okay, but when you update the differences, you're going to update those differences on the main. So it's going to actually create those adjustments on the main, adjusting the main's inventory, right? So if your main on hand and your store on hand that's in the store are not in sync, then your counts will be, your differences will alter or make the wrong updates, let's say. Okay, so when you come into physical, this is what it should look like. There should not be anything here, okay, at a remote. And so what you're going to do to start your physical is click on New. Okay, you can write notes on here, December 7th, PI, right? And you pick your store. If you're in a store, you're only going to see one. All right, so I'm just going to pick store 30. Okay, you may see this filter, right? If you are counting everything in the store, you want to make sure this filter is clear, right? So make sure it's clear because we want to count everything in the store, not just one vendor or one DCS or a sequence of item numbers or whatever, right? So make sure that filter is clear if you're doing an inventory for everything in the store. So what this is doing is going through, making a list of all your item codes, okay, and the on hand that belong to those item codes, right? So if I go into this inventory tab here on the physical stores, right, I can see here's all my item codes, right? And what I started with, so store start is what Retail Pro thought you had on hand when you run the store start, which is what I just did. We haven't counted anything yet, so all of these are going to be zeros. And the only place I should have differences right now is any place where I actually have on hand. So, there is a little bit of on hand in this store. Right, so there was a couple right there, right? Just whizzed by here. I'm gonna pick a couple of items here off of this list. All right, so let's see. I've got 114. Okay, and then 1103. All right, so what you're looking at here is what's on hand in Retail Pro, what I've counted, and what the differences would be if I updated this. right? And I'm just going in to look at this to pick a couple of items to use as a demo here. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what that store start does. Makes a file, only shows what you have on hand. So once you have done the start, okay, in the store, okay, you're going to go out of here and you're going to go to zones, and you're going to stay in zones pretty much until the end of the physical, right? So now you're ready. You take your scanners. If you're using scanners, you go out, you scan your first zone, right? So I'm going to bring my map back up here. All right, so here's a map. So let's say we go and we scan this orange zone, which is labeled R01. Okay, so the team that's running the scanner goes out, scans everything in R01. Okay, when you're ready, and if you're using any of the scanners except for the Janum 66, the Foundry Logic type, you're going to want to scan a zone. You're going to want to come and dump it into the into Retail Pro. All right. So to do that, you go to zones. Okay, you tell the system, I'm creating a new zone. Right. You tell it what store. Okay, you tell it what the zone name is. Now these names do not have to match what is in your what's in your map. Okay, but it's a good idea if they do. You are limited to 5 characters in version 8. All right, so when you're making your map, if you've got like, wall or back wall or something like that, you're going to want to abbreviate that, but just make sure that it's easy for you to tell where physically that is on your map, because you might need it later. All right, you have an area here where you can write a note to self about what this actually is, or if there are any problems or anything like that when you scanned it. Okay, but essentially you're going to create a new zone. Okay, and it's going to bring up this window. Now this window allows you to do a number of things. One is to import a file from either an Excel or either the Regis or Washington. Okay, so we're not really getting too deep into that today. Okay, it also allows you to manually key enter or scan in items either off a count sheet or directly into the computer. Right, some people take their whole inventory that way. It just kind of depends on the situation. Okay, but more often than not, probably about 80% of our customers use portable terminal. Right, so if I click on portable terminal, okay, that tells the system I'm trying to download something. Right, and so with the PT, okay, which is this guy right here. Nope, not that guy right there. This guy right here. There is an interface cable that plugs into the bottom of this that you have plugged into COM1 or 2 on the back of your computer, right? So when you get ready to download it, you plug that cable in. There's a couple of key sequences. It's F2 and F2 and F1, right? To tell the system to download the file, right? So you would be doing that right now, right? After you've started this download. Okay, now it gives you like 30 to 45 seconds or something like that to get that connection made. And if you get the connection made, that's going to download. Okay, and it's going to tell you whether or not it found any errors. If it did find any errors, it will put that in a display so that you can see it. Okay, and the bad thing about doing this without an actual scanner is that I have to wait for it to time out, or it's going to give me a problem, right? So anyway, you scan, it's going to say scan complete, or 1 or 2 items move to the error list. Okay, and then you're going to say OK on this screen, right? Okay, and then you're going to see that your scans in a list here. Let me go to scanned here. You're going to see your scans in here. Now, because we don't have a scanner, what I'm going to do is just add a few counts into my zone manually, which is the way some people do this. If I go to manual entry here and I just enter my I'm going to enter quantity for current item. So I check this quantity for current item button so that when I enter my number and I press enter, it's going to stop at quantity, right? So I'm going to enter, I got 40 of these things. So if you're entering off a count sheet, or if you're, just counting a drawer or something like that, and you're not actually scanning the barcode, you can enter large quantities quickly this way. Okay, right. And if I put in another item, so you can default to 1. Right, so if it's just a onesie, that I'm just one click or one enter away from having things entered into the display below. Right, if I leave next item checked, okay, then I don't have a choice. It's just, this is more like a scan mode, right? So if what you're counting, like a jewelry counter or something like that, is close to the register, right, you can just pull the items out, put yourself in manual entry, okay, and just scan away. And there's something that's not part of my inventory. Okay, so 1103, 1103, 1103. All right, so what I've done here is, made a zone with some stuff in it, right? I can see what stuff it is. Okay, if I leave, hit the escape here, or go to Retail Pro back, here's my zone list. Tells me what, how many barcodes I have in there, right? How many counts total, right? And so when you download off the scanner, right, it will come out to here, and if you don't have any errors, you'll see this kind of display. We have some printing things, and my printing icon is grayed out for some reason. Let's see, let's go into, there we go. So we do have some forms. If you don't have the BHD forms, you might have some of your own, but we've got some pieces of paper, right, document designs, basically, that would allow us to show what we counted. A lot of people use these to go put them back out on the zone. Okay, what is going on here? So that if they're, they can leave this piece of paper on the fixture so everybody knows what they've counted, and they can use that piece of paper then to, somebody can come by and double count and check over or audit anything that that the teams do. Got something going a little haywire here, and I'm not sure what it is. Okay, I got a question here, so I'll try to answer the question here. What if you do your errors in their file? All right, so let me show you in the documentation that we pass out what the procedure is. Right, so in these files here, which, by the way, if any of you do not have copies of this physical inventory little manual thing that we do, email us here at service at bighairydog.com. Tell us what kind of scanner you use, or if you don't use a scanner, we have outlines for those as well. But basically, this goes through the process, everything that we're talking about today, right? So it's an additional resource that you can use to make sure you know what you're doing here, right? So this section that I'm scrolling by here, so we created the physical, okay? We were entering zones, okay? And then there's a section down here, right, that explains how to handle errors, okay? So if you get an error, right, you will see this message or something to this effect: some items were not found in inventory, removed to the error, right? And so, we put in this don't panic. So basically, the zone will have a red dot next to it. So there are errors in there. It's very obvious, okay, that there's something wrong with the zone. You can't merge all your zones, which is a step that you need in order to complete it. So basically, until you resolve these errors, you can't go on and finish the inventory. You do not have to resolve these errors Oh, here we go. Do not have to resolve these errors immediately with each zone. So if you have errors in your zone, you want to make sure that you know what they are. This zone report that took a while to come up would show you the errors at the top, right, and the good stuff in the bottom. So if you have errors, you can use this printout to make sure that you have a record of those errors. Okay, and then you're going to clear the scans out of your scanner. That was one thing that I just wanted to make clear here, up here. So with the PT scanner, right, this step right here. Okay, once you know you've got your zone scanned into Retail Pro, you want to make sure that you clear your scanner, okay, and of the counts that are in it before you send it back out to scan another one. That's very important, because if you don't do that, you're going to be, the next time they come and dump the scanner, you're going to have the counts from the first session, you're going to have the counts from the second session, and you'll have overcounted stuff. So on the PT, you go back to the main menu, you press the F3 key 3 times, right, and it will tell you that the deletion is complete. Okay, so on the JANM, it's similar. I don't have that, or JANM and the symbol. It's similar, but there's a key sequence that you do to make sure that you've deleted everything out of the scanner. Okay, and then you go back out and scan the next zone. Okay, you do not have to fix the errors in order to send that scanner back out. You want to keep your scanners out there scanning, because that's what takes the longest. All right, so if you have errors, okay, I'm talking here about the print that I just showed you, right? So what you will see is something that looks like this. So the line that's where you see text and there is white, that is a good item, okay? And the thing that's in yellow, where all you see is the import ID, that's the bad item. So we scanned this barcode 9999979, and that was not a barcode that Retail Pro recognized. Okay, so what this display is telling you is that that thing was next to item 123. Okay, it might have been right next to 271, or 271 might be the item for the next thing in the error. But basically, it's an error sandwich. So we know it was between 123, the import ID 123, and the import ID 271. Okay, so this gives us a fighting chance of going back and looking at 100 items, right, and figuring out where that bad scan was. Okay, so Retail Pro knew that you counted this item number 123, and there were 2 of them. Right next to it, there was a 9989979. There's only 1 of them. Okay, and then right next to that, there was a 271, and that's a bulb setup cube, whatever that is. Okay, and there were 3 of them. So you should be able to take this information, go find that thing, okay, that has 9989979 on it. Okay, once you have located it, there's 2 ways to deal with it. Okay, first way is if you know what the item number should have been. Okay, then on your error listing. Okay, let me bring your error listing up here. Okay, we're going to get out of there. All right, so on the error listing, so this is where your white and yellow would be. You can actually edit this. So you can click the edit button right here, okay, and you can type an item number here right into the screen. Okay, so if you know what Retail Pro item number that 9979 should have been, you type that item number there, it knows how many you scanned, you save it, and your errors are resolved. Now, some people choose to take their errors and deal with them all later. Okay, and so if you're choosing to do that, what you want to do is make sure you've identified what the thing is, right? So if you go out to the zone and you find the thing, you put it on a pile back by your desk, or someplace where it's obvious that these are errors that we have to deal with, and then you would go into this, and you would highlight this yellow line and click the delete button. So that'll take it out of your error list, and that means that once those are all resolved, then the red dot goes away. Okay, so this red dot right here on the zone, right? Once you have either identified and told Retail Pro in the error listing what items they are, okay, or if you have deleted anything that was unidentified in there, then that red dot will go away, and that's your goal. Okay. You also want to make sure that if you're pulling those things, then you would want to make a separate zone potentially of errors and key enter your counts in there. Some people, like it says here, they would identify what it is and then add that item to another zone that hasn't been counted yet. I don't prefer that method. I prefer to isolate that stuff. So if there's any question later on, I can say, here's all the errors. They're in one pile here. They're in one manual zone. Hopefully you have done enough prep work so that you don't have a lot of errors and it's a small pile. Okay. Does that answer your question adequately, I hope? If not, there's and if you're scanning in particular, by the way, you're not going to get errors, right? If you're not scanning, if you're manually counting and key entering or scanning directly into Retail Pro, you can't create an error. That's why I can't create one to show it to you. If you're using any of the scanners where you go scan a zone and then dump it, you could have errors because you can potentially scan a wrong barcode. If you're using Regis and Washington, any of the inventory services, if you give them a validation file, which is a list of your valid barcodes beforehand, that will cut down on the errors. They don't know your merchandise, and they can accidentally scan things that is not your barcode. And if you use a validation file, that will cut down on that. It won't eliminate it entirely, but it will cut down on it. All right, so we have scanned everything, right? We have put it into zones, right? That's one zone. I'm just going to create one more zone here so it looks a little more normal. Zone. All right, so I usually tell or counsel people to put your items that were errors, pull them out, put them all in one place, so that 703, right? So that you have a record, right, of what goes in there. So once you've created everything in your zones, this is what your screen's going to start to look like. You'll have a list of zones here. If there's no red dots, then those zones are done. Okay, and some people, when they're doing physical inventories here, they would merge their zones one at a time. Okay, which you're perfectly welcome to do. A lot of people like to merge their zone if there were no errors and they're not double counting and they feel pretty good about the count. They might say, okay, so I know that one, right? I know it was good, so check it off, right? Hit the merge zone button over here. It defaults to whoever's logged in, right? And then you get your magic blue dot, right? Blue dot means I'm done with this. Okay, it means this is ready, verified, and now these quantities are compared in your start physical. So if I were to go back to my discrepancy list or look at my inventory, these items that are in this display, these are now compared up against the items that were against my start quantity. But you really don't want to start looking at your discrepancies too early, right? You want to focus on, let's get everything counted. Let's make sure we've taken care of our errors. Let's merge everything and then start looking at our discrepancies. Okay. Because until you've merged everything that you've counted, you still may be finding things, right, that need to accumulate against your start quantity. Okay, so The other thing that you can do is you can wait until all your zones are finished, right? Because one of your options is to hit this Mark Store button, okay? And that puts a green check. You can see my green check all the way over here. Puts a green check on the on each zone that has not yet been merged. And then you can merge everything that's marked using this button right here. Okay. And now I would have blue dots every place where there's a green check. It won't put a green check any place where there's a red dot. So you're going to have to resolve your errors before you can finish your physical. Okay. Just as a, looking here, they didn't put this on the screen. They usually hide this here. Mark. Merge, okay, maybe it's on back here. Merge zones. Okay, so what I was looking for here is I just wanted to make it clear that once you've merged the zone, that doesn't mean that you can't still add to it if you find you have to, right? So I went back to the physical stores menu, right? I'm looking at merged zones. I hit this green check sign here. Here's the things that have been merged, and there's an unmerge button on here. So if you find that you merged something accidentally, or you find after you merge it that there's a gross miscount in there and you just want to edit it, you can do that, right? So if I were to take this error zone, right, and unmerge it, I could now edit that, right? So a lot of times, people might stumble when they're using a scanner and enter 12 when they meant to enter 2, right? If those kinds of things happen, you can edit the zone. So here's the unmerged zone. I can go to the scanned tab. I can go right to here, okay, and I can change that count, right? So edit, change my count to 12 and save it, okay? Then I can go back and remerge it. Okay, so just want to show everybody that that's available. All right, so if you counted everything, you've merged everything, now you're ready to look at the results, everybody's favorite thing. To look at the results, review discrepancies, update, all the rest of that stuff is done under the Stores tab, right? So if I go to Stores, okay, and I look at my my store line here, I've got 6 scans, total count 60. This is minimal, so I don't have that many things in my file, but I'm going to, the next step would be here to look at your discrepancies. So if I click on discrepancy here, okay, this shows everything that's different from the way Retail Pro thought you had it and compared to counts, right? So this line is one that I entered where the store thinks I'm supposed to have 45. I only counted 40, right? And so I'm 5 short. Okay, most of the rest of these we're not really going to look at. So 1103, right? Here's one. So here the store thought I had 12, or Retail Pro thinks I have 12. I only counted 6. Okay, so what you're looking at here is, ultimately what you should be reviewing to make sure that you've counted right. What you can do, okay, is, organizations fall into 3 different categories usually. They either say, I'm going to sweat every little difference, right? So I'm looking at these big differences, right, and going, holy crap, what happened there, right? And you're sweating each one of these, right, as you go through. If you're counting at a remote store, okay, then you need to look at these briefly, but you're not going to be able to spend a lot of time trying to troubleshoot them, okay? That's going to have to be done at the main if you're using version 8 and you're a remote store. So what we usually counsel people to do is look at the discrepancies. If you see something where it's obvious, right, like this one, for instance, system thought I had 42 of these, I know I have them. I might not have 42, but I know I have them, so we missed them. Go find them, right? So, maybe they're in a box under your desk. Maybe they're in a back room. They got counted as something else. If you can find them, okay, then you can change the count here before you send it up to central, okay? And always, 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 okay, we recommend that you not change the count directly in the store tab, okay, which you can in version 8, but you don't have an audit trail, okay? So if something happens and we have to reverse your physical, we won't know what those counts are, right? So always, 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 if you're going to make changes, right, do it in a zone, okay? Even if you're isolating this to, discrepancies or anything like that, make a new zone or add it to your errors, okay? And so I'm telling the system that SKU, okay, I found those 42. Okay, so now that will drop off of your discrepancy list after you merge the file, right? So I've gone back, I've added some counts, I merged my zone, right? So when I go back to stores, okay, this is not going to be on my discrepancy list. It's not going to be on my, what did I do? 115, okay, merge zone, I did merge that. What happened? Must have had the wrong item. Hang on a sec. Scanned. Oh, it didn't take. All right, so fine. I'm going to try that again here. So I'm going to go to merge zones. I'm going to unmerge my zone. Okay, I'm going to go back here. For some reason, I didn't save that. I hit the wrong button. All right, so scanned, add counts, manual entry, 115, quantity for next item, 42, close. Interesting. All right, so we've got a problem with that SKU, and I'm not sure exactly what the problem is. So we're going to fake this for now so that I can show you what I've got here. Discrepancy. All right, so what should have happened is this should have filled this in right here. Okay. Okay, so now I have 0 store differences, right? So what I needed to do here is explain what the store difference column means, okay? Because this is where everybody gets stuck sometimes on physical inventory. The store start, okay, was what Retail Pro thought you had when we started the physical. The store physical is what you counted in all of your zones, all right? So if there is anything in store difference, okay, that means that if we update, this is what's going to get adjusted, right? So in this case, it's going to take 5 out. In this case, it's going to add 1 to whatever the current on hand is. So this is a key point because a lot of people will take their physical, like we take it Saturday night or whatever, right? Once you have frozen the inventory, entered all the counts, okay, and merged all the zones, you can take your time evaluating the differences. You do not have to update that night, okay? Unless you're at a remote store in a multi-store environment. If you're at a remote store, you're going to want to say, I'm done with my counts. Those get pulled up to the main, and they are evaluated and potentially updated or definitely updated at the main, right? So if you're at a remote, you're going to look at this, you're going to make sure that you've counted everything. Okay, you're going to get those counts in, you're going to merge, you're going to check your discrepancies to make sure there's nothing like huge that you missed, okay? And you're going to prepare that PI. There's instead of update on the side, it says prepare PI, okay? But the point here is that you don't have to get the update if you're at the main done that night. You do, if you're at the store, you have to get to this point, you have to prepare PI, which is a button that's on the side. I can show you that in my little listy thing here. Say we're past merging, right? And so here, right, is what happens. Okay, so this right here where it says this step right here is what you need to do, so this will pull up to the main if you're at a remote store, right? There is a button that says update, or some older versions say prepare PI. Okay, so when you're done looking at discrepancies, we also have a sliver of discrepancy reports, right? If you don't have these ones that have, BHD in it, or this exclamation discrepancy, let us know, and we can download them for you. Most of these are ones that we've modified for our purposes, and I'll just show you one of them. It shouldn't take that long to accumulate. Right, and so this is broken out by department. There's a vendor version broken out by vendor, so it makes it easy to look at your differences. Also, at the end, there's going to be totals, right? So, if you need something, so how well you did or not, right? These reports can give you a nutshell version. Okay, and those reports are available after you do the update, right? Because when you update, the file actually goes into what we call a PI archive. So if you forgot to do it when you were in the middle of your physical and you've updated, you can still get those reports. Most people will look at those reports because it makes it easy to see where things like maybe got cross-counted in department, right? In this display, we have limited ability to sort and filter, and we can't add things up, but in the doc design, we can. All right, so you look at your discrepancies. You do as much as you are motivated to do in here. Add things to a zone, right, if you're changing the counts, so we have an audit trail. Okay, and then once you're done doing that, right, your last step is to update. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this update in and talk about the individual little screens, right, but I am not going to actually update this because I would remove everything I have except for my 60 units that I actually counted. So what I want to do is show you on my little documentation thing what everything looks like. Okay, so whether you're updating this at the main for a remote or at the remote to prepare it to get polled, okay, this part looks the same, right? So you're going to go update from the side menu, okay? This is the important thing that we want to talk about, this all items little setting right here. So if I click update, okay, I have to pick my store. If you're doing a remote store, you're only going to have the one. If you're at the main, there'll be a list. Okay. All right, and the default here is only items with physical count. You want to change that. So if you've counted everything, you want to make sure when you update that it says all items. People forget this all the time. Okay, and the reason that we need to do all items is if you have a -1 on hand, okay, and you didn't count any, i.e. the thing was gone, okay, the system is going to adjust 1 in to inventory and bring that -1 up to 0. Okay, and unless you check this button right here for all items, that is not going to happen. All right, so if you leave it with this, only things where you actually counted something, okay, are going to update. This can be handy in some cases, but with a full PI, never. All right, so with a full PI, always have this all items button checked so that we update every item from the start physical. Okay, usually people will have a physical reason code, so this is going to create an adjustment document. Okay, and we want that adjustment document to have a reason code on it so that we know why those adjustments were made. Okay, and so I have this old version here, so I'm going to have to back this up. So I'm hoping that this will work that way. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So once you've given it the reason code, that you get this message, which looks like you're at the total end of everything, but there's one more thing, one more question you have to answer. Okay, and that's this filter, right? So there was a filter at the beginning. The filter at the beginning was to figure out whether or not you wanted to count everything in the store. Okay, and since we cleared the filter, we made a start inventory for everything in the store. Okay, with the update, you have the same option, right? So even if you started with everything in the store, you could choose only to update a vendor. You do not want to do that in this case. Okay, so when you're taking a full physical, you want to make sure that you clear this filter and that there's nothing left in here. Okay, and there will be, if you're doing more than one store at a time, if you're at a main and you have multiple stores that got counted on the same day or that you're updating at the same time, okay, there will be a clear filter for everyone. This one says store 30, right? If I had multiple stores, I would clear this one and click OK, and then it would prompt me for store 50 and so on and so forth. Now, I am not going to actually say OK here because I don't want to update my physical, but this is the absolute last thing that happens. Right, so I'm going to cancel it. Okay, and so the other thing that we usually show you on here is if you've done your update. Okay, if the archive right here on the main screen of the PI tool, okay, contains, if I go to stores, all your previous updates. Right, so if I look at this, right, I've got updates going back quite a ways in this data set, right? So these are all your previous physicals by store. So this happened to be a multi-store data set that I had. They'd been in version 8 for quite some time. And so even if you've updated something, you could go back and look at this physical, okay? Look at what the discrepancies were, okay? Print the discrepancies, et cetera, right? So that stuff doesn't go away. If you updated something and you forgot to check all items inventory, we can unarchive this physical and then re-update it, right? So don't attempt that on your own. If that happens, make sure you get a little bit of tech support just to make sure you're doing the right thing. Okay, because if you go around in circles a couple of times, you might not be able to fix it all the way, right? So just know that you have an option if you've updated something and something looks terribly wrong, right? Call into tech, get on the tech board, have them take a look, right? And if the answer is unarchive and re-update, then that's a way to that may be the way to save your counts. All right. All right. So that was basically the end of what we usually do on this tour of the physical inventory. Some people will run an on-hand report. Their accountants or whatever would like to see an on-hand report from before they update the physical, and then the same on hand after they update the physical. That is up to you. You would need to run that, if you're multi-store, you want to run that at the main, not on the store, because you're not actually physically updating your on hand at the store. All right, so I think that's about what we have to cover here. If there's anybody that needs to still ask a question, you can drop into the question bar. Usually within a day or so, you'll get an email that has this they'll have this recording attached to it, right? So, all right. so not seeing any other questions. We will repeat the V8 webinar, I believe, in January. There are more than one recording of the V8s if you're not scanning, okay, and you want some, direct help on doing your inventory another way. Then call into tech and talk to a trainer briefly. So a question just came in: if the inventory takes longer than a day, should polling be suspended? And the answer to that is no. So once you have started the physical and entered in all the counts and merged all the files, right? That start physical is what we're comparing everything to. So polling makes no difference. Okay, so as long as the polling is caught up before you do the start physical, so initialize your on hand out to the store that you're counting, initialize that a day or two before, okay? Quick poll if you're doing the physical in the evening, quick poll after your sales are closed for the day, okay? And then you finish your physical in the remote store, do the prepare PI, okay? And generally your normal polling cycle is going to get that count pulled up to your main. You can quick poll again after you update the PI at the remote if you want to make sure, okay? But there really is no need for polling to be suspended, okay? That's the, the system is built to take all of that into consideration. All right, anybody else? All right, so like I said, video channel on our website. I don't think I have it up actually here. Maybe I do. No, I don't. So if you have questions, email in. We can point you in the right direction. If you want copies of this type of manual that I've been showing you here, we send these out if you rent scanners. If you have your own scanners, we'd be glad to send it to you. Just let us know what kind of scanner you use, or if you don't use a scanner at all, we have some that explain how to do your physical with manual counts. So just let us know how you do your counts, or if you're not sure and you want to change, a couple minutes with the trainer, and we'll get you the right documentation to take your physical. Oh, one more question. Hang on. You're welcome, Brent. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And like I said, you'll get an email that'll link you back to this, and let us know if you need further documentation or help. And thanks for your attention.